On this day, in 1922, a most remarkable photo was published on page 5 of The Telegraph, one of Brisbane's local rags. With the heading "Relic of Old Brisbane," the article's caption read, "A few days ago, the men engaged in excavations on the site of the new town hall came upon a wooden pipe which gave a further proof that the wells which had been discovered recently near Allen and Stark's building in Burnett Lane and on the Burnett Lane, rear of the Criterion Hotel, were part of a series of water supply in the early days of Brisbane. These wells or tanks were connected with pipes, but few, if any persons, thought that they were wood pipes made from the indigenous grey ironbark and others of Queensland's hardwoods. The pipe, the bore of which is seen in the left-hand corner of the picture, is one of the grey ironbark pipes, and the bore is about 4 inches in diameter, the diameter of the log being about 9 inches. The soundness of the pipe speaks volumes for the lasting properties of ironbark timber. The discovery already has aroused great interest, and through the kindness of Mr. Midson, the contractor, the Historical Society has been supplied with a section of the wood pipe, and it is understood that the City Council and the museum may also be supplied with sections. Thus will be preserved another link with the early history of Brisbane. It may be pointed out that some of the wood pipes, which are of red gum, have not lasted so well, as the ragged nature of the timber unearthed and disclosed in our pictures bears witness. But what of the detailed history and origin of these wooden pipes? For that, we need to delve back to the very earliest days of Brisbane's evolution. In the Moreton Bay Penal Settlement, a consistent supply of water between buildings was paramount. However, in a settlement comparatively worlds away from the colony headquarters in Sydney, denied the luxury of government-supplied building materials, construction of the necessary plant and equipment required an open mind and some serious experimentation. Fortunately, a natural string of creeks and waterholes originated around the current site of the Normanby Hotel and the high ground running downstream through the area now occupied by Roma Street Railway Station into a swampy area where Brisbane City Hall now exists, and then in the rough direction of Adelaide Street, Creek Street, hence the name, and out into the Brisbane River at current Riverside. Over time, a dam was built across the creek near the intersection of current Roma and George Streets, creating a reservoir in the vicinity at which a pump mechanism and convict-driven treadmill were installed. With the basic infrastructure now in place, hollow ironbark logs were sourced from the surrounding hills to serve their purpose as conduit. Each hollow log was attached to the one preceding it, forming a water pipeline running from the new reservoir to current King George Square, where it finally tracked below ground at about Adelaide Street. From here, the subterranean water pipeline split, one line heading through the Superintendent's Garden to current George Street almost at the top of the Queen Street Mall, then ran alongside the lumber yard down George Street on its way to the guardhouse and officers' quarters, approximately where the Treasury Casino now stands, before crossing current Elizabeth Street and terminating at the Commandant's quarters, approximately where the old government printery now exists. The second line ran from the split at Adelaide Street straight to the convict barracks, approximately parallel to the current Burnett Lane alongside the Queen Street Mall. A primary convict-powered treadmill pump was installed at the main reservoir, supported by a handful of auxiliary manual pumps and tanks along the pipeline's route. On the opening of Brisbane town for free settlement, the original water supply route was quickly phased out and a new infrastructure was put into place. However, the original pipeline and tank system lay dormant and forgotten beneath the feet of Brisbane's residents. In January 1907, workmen excavating on the corner of Queen and George Streets struck a strange hollow log buried below the surface. On inquiry, it was discovered that they'd stumbled upon Moreton Bay Penal Settlement's original water pipeline. On ripping the section of log out of the ground, they were amazed to find the timber was in remarkably well-preserved state, having laid undisturbed below ground for virtually 80 years. Similar discoveries were made across the Brisbane CBD in the following years, some of the timber apparently being used to produce a fine walking stick for T.W. Connor, the Auditor General. Another significant discovery was made in February 1922 alongside Burnett Lane. Whilst carrying out sewerage works in the lane behind Watson and Ferguson Co's premises, workmen exposed a large brick-lined water-filled well where there definitely shouldn't have been a large brick-lined water-filled well. At a loss to explain the find, an old resident of Brisbane pointed out that their discovery dated back to Brisbane's convict era. They'd stumbled across the pump well which sat directly beneath the original convict barracks. The workers set to pumping the well dry, which took some considerable time, and we can only imagine that the void was backfilled. There's a very good likelihood this brick-lined convict well still exists below Burnett Lane, albeit filled with dirt and rubble. One can only hope that one day, during groundworks in the lane, the well will be exposed once more and documented fully. While much of Moreton Bay Penal Settlement's original water pipeline and wells has since been removed, some would definitely still exist beneath the streets and buildings of the CBD. As to how long these will remain below ground is anyone's guess, although it will be a special occasion when the remainder finally sees the light of day.